Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator. And today I have with me Kevin Lee. Hey, Kevin.
Hi, my dear. Good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you. And I love your background. You're
Thank you.
talking
Thank
about we
you.
have the same initials, so I could just take over your office there.
Come on in. Let's work together.
Yeah. Just so people can know you, I'm going to go ahead and read your bio.
Sure.
So, Kevin Lee, international best-selling author, media personality, motivational impact speaker, transformational facilitator. Attending his inspiring and transformative gatherings, audiences become empowered by teaching topics like purpose, leadership, business entrepreneurialism, service to others, gratitude, and self-love. His mind, body, spirit teachings include consciousness, death and dying, and the soul itself. As featured on NBC, CBS, Fox, and Chicago News, his two-time spiritual author's latest #1 international best-selling book, Your Divine Purpose: A Journey to Fulfillment and Legacy, has earned high praise from readers. Kevin has been trained extensively and been certified by some notable names such as Lisa Nichols, Sean Smith, John C. Maxwell, and Susie Carder. He has also professionally produced 2 meditation albums, and he can also be found in his podcast, Live with Kevin Lee, interviewing leaders, luminaries, and sharing enlightened lessons for his audience. Well, it sounds like you're doing a lot. So I would be like to hear your story, find out where it all started, and what made you become the person you are today.
My gosh, that's a big question, but I'll tell you this. It's great to be here to be able to share on just on another stage, another community where purpose is the passion, the word of the day, if you will. And I think that's really the key to everything that I do. It's all about, do I have passion for this? Do I not have passion for that? And which really is the core of finding your purpose. And where does all this come from? Where does all of this drive for just being the best that I can be so that I can show up for the best in a best way for someone else? And I'm going to go all the way back to childhood. And you may not hear it in my voice, but I am from Central Texas. I grew up on a big cattle ranch. I was a little awkward boy, very effeminate, not very masculine. I was awkward, clumsy, definitely a very, I would say, visionary thinker. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was very visionary. I was very future focused and definitely very dreamy. I was lost in thought and imagination. Um, and growing up in a very conservative, all-white community where we went to church, it was all white, and the races were separated. They still are today in a very large part where my family is. And it was hostile, I'll say that. It was a challenge, and I had parts of my family that were celebrated me and parts of my family that tolerated me. And that didn't last very long. And probably in my teens, there was a situation where I had left our farm without family permission, which was probably the biggest thou shalt not. And when I came home, the gate was locked to our property. And there was a very strange sense. I remember coming over me thinking we in all my life, I have rarely seen our gate locked, which there was an immediate sense of you're not welcome.
Mm.
And so I made it through the gate eventually, made it up to the house. And as I went up to the house, the front door was locked and it was never locked. And both of my parents' vehicles were home. So I knew something was up, something was about to go down. And as I made it into my home, there were my parents, my father and his wife. And we had a very, very difficult, very traumatic interaction. It involved a weapon. And luckily, I'm here today after that situation, but there were words exchanged and a lot of, it was incredibly traumatic. And it really, from that experience, I realized in that moment that my father was dead to me in a spiritual sense. I knew I had no one but myself. There was a silent partner to his side that I realized was not coming to my defense, and she never did. And it wasn't a surprise, but it was still hurtful to me as a child, a young man. And so I luckily made it through the situation, bumped and bruised. And I realized if I wanted to achieve my dreams, the visions that I had for myself in the future, I had to simply, all I had was me from that point forward. So I made it through high school. I made it into college, made it off to life, but I began to realize the family, the community that I didn't have in childhood, that I didn't have really around me, I began to build that for myself because I began to find people that resonated with me, that aligned with me, that were saying the same things as me, meaning I was speaking about my passions. I was speaking about wanting to do great things. I wanted to go to college, and none of my friends wanted to go to college. I surrounded myself with like-minded people, and it was from that traumatic experience that really, I would say, laser focused me in life to what do you really want? Because now all you have is you. And so I knew I wanted people that were kind, that loved me for just me. I didn't have to dim my light anymore. I could be awkward. I could be effeminate. I could be a non-typical male. And I found people who began to celebrate me and treated me even more loving than my family ever did. And so really I will say that really was the planting of the garden of the harvest that I have today, because it showed me the power of surrounding yourself with people that are passionate in life, that are doing great things in life, and that really celebrate and love you without any judgment. And that is the most powerful thing that I can share in this opening message. I know it was a little long, but I wanted to kind of give you the framework for why do I do what I do today. And that's really where it all started. My purpose today is because of the pain from my childhood.
Yeah. And when I think about that, many of us have awkward things or things, that make us feel like we don't fit in or we're not accepted.
Right.
But to actually have your parents basically
Basically, right.
reject you,
Yes.
but then you had the confidence to speak out.
Yes.
So a lot of people have so much shame, or they've been so beaten down
Mhm.
that they don't have the confidence to talk about their dreams because they think no one cares or no one's going to listen. So where did that come from? Where did you get that confidence and the bravery to start speaking about who you are and what you want in life?
I think back to my childhood. How did I make it through a situation where a gun was in my face, basically, and that a person in my family would say, "You're no longer welcome. We don't love you. We've never loved you." Things like that. Incredibly hurtful things to a child. And how could I make it through that? How did I not crumble? How did I not want to take my own life? How did I not literally pack my bags and leave in the middle of the night? And
Yeah.
I think it was because I had a fighting spirit. I had a spirit where I was constantly fighting to not dim my light, constantly fighting to keep my light from being extinguished. And I think that lent to my survival and my thriving, because I always knew I have no one but myself, and my dreams were important to me. Even as a child, I knew I'm going to do something. I didn't know what it was. I knew I was going to do something, and I just had to get the means to get out into the world so that I could do that thing, whatever that is. So something was pulling me. Something was telling me, keep your light lit. Don't hide it under a bushel. Even though I did, I remember as a child constantly being aware of thinking, and I only discovered that probably in the last 5 years. I didn't realize I was determining the safety factor between me and you as a stranger. Are you going to put my life at risk by associating with you? And so I would judge every person in my life by, are you going to to threaten me? Are you going to bring harm to me? So I was definitely a quiet child to a degree. I was definitely like I am today. I could be chatty, but I would be chatty. I would let my light shine when I knew that I was safe. And so I was reserved, but not reserved. I don't know if that makes sense. I was super cautious, very empathic. I didn't even know that was a word
Mhm.
in my childhood. And I would sense safety or no safety in a person around me. And it's interesting you bring that up because you mentioned there are people that were not celebrated or people who were put down in families or in communities or in their religions, whatever it may be. And how would those people find their way to purpose and passion and an amazing life? And they may not have the fighting spirit that I had, but I'll tell you this. And if somebody watching, listening is experiencing this, think of this. Begin to surround yourself with people that think like you think, that want what you want. If that's all you can do, surround yourself with the similar butterflies in your garden of life, and they may not have the strength to lift you up, but just by their very presence, they will naturally pour into you and you will feel more empowered because of you're going to begin hearing the same types of things that you're thinking. It's coming back to you. It's being mirrored back to you. So you're in alignment. And I truly believe that when you're surrounded by like-minded people, there's a synergy that happens. Something greater comes out of that. And if that's all you can muster around you, do that, because life is challenging, and sometimes we don't have the breath or the strength to rise up and to tackle the monsters in our life. I get it.
And when you talked about, getting home and having a weapon pointing at you, but then you stayed. Being a
Yep.
child, I didn't have another choice, so you stayed. But I think everybody who's listening right now is asking this question: how did you sleep at night? Were you, did
I,
you wonder when you went to sleep that you weren't going to wake up because someone was going to hurt you while you
you
were
know what? I've
sleeping?
literally never thought of that, but I will tell you this. When I was a younger man, I could sleep anywhere and fall asleep anytime. In a thunderstorm, on a bumpy roller coaster, I could sleep all the time. And so it was just the determination of I made it through the situation. I was definitely emotionally and spiritually traumatized. I remember that day, but I remember I made it past him and the gun. I made it to my room. I locked my door and I went to bed. I was in my own little cocoon. So my little room was my safety. It was never invaded. It was never, I never had situations where my parents came, busted through the door or anything. So I never felt that would happen. And so they just kind of were the type of people who would yell at you, scream at you, threaten you, but they would never really do anything about it. And so I knew I was going to be okay. And I also knew I had nowhere to go. I had no money.
Mhm.
No, but I had no one. We lived literally 30 miles from the nearest city. And so I had nowhere to go. And I knew it's the best I've got. And I just had to I had to learn to play the game. And I don't know that that's a nice thing to say. I had to learn to, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, all that kind of thing. Life is great. What can I do for you today? Literally, that was survival mode. That was me surviving till graduation, till I could become my own adult, which was only a couple of years away. And so sometimes we have to walk through the mud. We have to walk through the tar and get feathered in order to find our freedom. And I think sometimes we have to, and this just popped into my head, but it's like people say to me when they come to my courses and programs and they say, "Oh my God, this is amazing. I'm going to follow my purpose. I'm quitting my job tomorrow." And I'm like horrified. No, I told you day one, never quit your job. Your job is your investor to your dreams. Use them. In a way, I used my parents in a survival mode way. I knew they could feed me, they could clothe me, they could provide money to get me into college. I just had to play the game. I had to walk through whatever they wanted, not what I wanted for myself. And so that's kind of what we have to do in life is sometimes we have to continue in jobs that aren't the best, they don't serve our purpose, but they can provide a means to that end, which is your life purpose or a life on purpose, whatever your vision for your future might be. And sometimes we have to tolerate that or change the perspective of it. And instead of calling it a job, we call it, I'm going to see my investor today because they are investing in my dreams by giving me a paycheck every 2 weeks. So it really is about your mind's perspective of a situation. And I think I had to learn to do that real quick in childhood. It was a survival mechanism.
Yeah. So once you left the situation and, you went on to college, did you realize sometime at a later time that, okay, I don't have to keep playing the game anymore? How long did it take you to stop operating that way?
More years. Well, I'll tell you this. So I was still a little bit beholden to them, to my family, financially, not much. I was pretty much on my own once I hit 18. And so I went off to college and still had to see family from time to time. I knew once I graduated and had my job, I would get a salary, and then I could literally sever all ties, which is pretty much what I did with that part of the family. And but it still took several years of self-reflection experiences where for example, my vision for my future, which was to become a nurse, was so strong that everyone else in my life became secondary, tertiary, quaternary, whatever, fourth. In other words, what I wanted, what I needed was more important than anyone and anything. So I literally didn't make a lot of friends. I didn't go to a lot of events on campus because my priority was getting that degree so I could have my freedom. I would never have to answer to another person because I would have a paycheck. And that was really what I was seeking through college. So it was a lot of doing what I needed to do and also trying to make you happy because that's how I thought if I could make you happy and do great things for you or buy you things, then you would find value in me. Then I would matter. And that unfortunately came from childhood, trying to matter to my parents and trying to be loved by them. And because I didn't hear from my father, I didn't hear the words "I love you," maybe once a year. I didn't get hugs, things like that. And if I did, it was a forced hug. It was very strange childhood in that regards. And so I learned to make you happy, and then that smile would fill me up. And if I didn't get your smile, I wouldn't be full and I would feel empty and I would have to find other people to fill me up. So I learned a bad technique, which now I can appreciate, but it was a technique of finding people who were in need, and I would begin to fill those needs, and then the adulations and the praise they would heap on me, and they would talk to everybody, and those words would just be fuel to my soul. But whenever it dissipated or there wasn't a lot of those people singing my praises, I felt empty and I felt useless. I felt worthless. And that really was not the way to live. And it took many, many years, probably into my mid to late 30s, I would say mid 30s, before I realized that I had the power. I needed to just begin loving myself. It took a long time. And it's amazing. We don't know what we don't know and how we operate.
Yeah. And when you talk about, loving yourself, you know, I know there are people who to the day they die, they're wanting to please their parents. It's just some almost
Yeah,
subconscious, unconscious thing.
I
We
get.
even have beliefs that we want to do a certain thing to get the love or approval, or we want them to be proud of us.
So even
So,
even today, I can say there's a tiny part of me that would love a relationship with that father. He's still alive. He's quite elderly, but it just won't happen. And it's just not in the cards unless he picks up the phone.
mhm.
And that's okay. I think you're right. It's a very it's almost something in our DNA. There's just something in our soul that says you'll never be separate, and something always is pulling you back to them. And that's really an interesting thing you just said. I like that.
Yeah. So as a nurse, you were a nurse for many years. Nurse, I see, say the word for me.
Nurse anesthetist.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, I know that's a challenge, but it's that was a synchronistic experience on campus because when I was going to college, the only thing I knew was I like business. I was surrounded by entrepreneurialism in my family and all my family members. I had multiple family members because of divorces and things. And so I had extended families and I was constantly moving between them during holidays, summers, and court ordered, got to go to this part of the family and whatnot. And in a way, all that moving around, that was amazing for me. I think it really made it laid a foundation in my life for who I am today because I love travel. I love the differences in cultures. I love the different foods that are on tables. I love to hear how people speak differently or their different viewpoints on the world. I love that. And for a lot of people, that's not comfortable. They don't like change.
Mhm.
And I think that actually was a big blessing for me as a kid. And so anyway, a lot of my family members had their own little enterprises and all kinds of businesses. My first job, this is so cute. So I must have been about 7 or 8 years old. I had a grandmother who had a beautiful chandelier on the back of her Texas porch. It sat there for years. I'd never seen it work. It just laid on the ground, but it was in the corner covered by a sheet. Well, one day I kept thinking, those are diamonds. There's diamonds hanging on that light. And I thought, you know what? People buy diamonds. I see it on TV.
Uh-huh.
I think I can make some money from that. So I dismantled my grandmother's chandelier and took the diamonds to school in my little suitcase. And I sold all of those as diamonds to my classmates. I must have made about $30. And I only sold them for like 25 cents each, but I
Mhm.
made a lot. And I sold them for a few days. They were all gone. And so then one day, my grandfather came in the house and said, who touched the chandelier? And I got real quiet and they figured out it was me. And that was my first I was inspired to be an entrepreneur. Caused a lot of trauma. Got my butt busted, but it was, and I had to return my money. Gave all my money back to my grandmother. So
Uh-huh.
that was part of my punishment too. But anyway, with that being said, my family were very much entrepreneurs. So I knew business. So when I went to college, I thought I'll just do business.
Mhm.
And I thought, let me do Japanese international business because I want to live far away from my family in another culture. And I just want to exist somewhere else where people might treat me different, or they may not know my past, so they may not mess with me as much. And so then one day I went to a political rally. I had no clue why. I think I was guided out of my dorm by spirit. I wasn't aware of anything about spirit by then, but curiously enough, I went to this rally. I didn't like anything politically related, but I met a young man that I was drawn to and sat next to him, and he started speaking about becoming a nurse anesthetist. His aunt was rich, she's a nurse anesthetist. I said, well, I know you're lying because I know nurses are poor. Nurses don't make money. He said, well, not my aunt. She's different. Well, he really was a gift from God because he just that one little interaction, we became friends for years, but that one little interaction inspired me. I knew I loved serving people, right? I grew up in a very religious community where we're always serving other people before ourselves. And I knew that I loved medicine because we had veterinarians coming to our Texas cattle ranch all the time. So I was fascinated by what they were doing with the animals. And I knew that I was very entrepreneurialist. I had that spirit about me. So I thought, well, this sounds perfect. So that's really how it all began. It took me a while, probably about 15 years to reach my goal, but I did it. And so today I've been a nurse for 35 years, serving people, healing people, just holding space for people in difficult moments. And it's funny, I didn't realize until probably about maybe about 10 years ago that what I did in nursing was really what my soul has been wanting to do in ministry or in service to other people, which is to hold space to help people heal in the way they need to heal, to hold space so people can begin to look inside themselves instead of all the danger around them. or the distractions around them, to look inside to see, well, what do I really love? Who am I? What are my dreams? What are my visions? What are my talents? What are my skills or my passions? And so that's really what I do in every stage, with every audience. I have the intention, which is really my mission. I'm here to create the space that transforms lives to greatness. And so I literally want to create the experience that gives them permission to shine, gives them permission to seek their purpose. And that's what I do.
That's beautiful. So thinking about being a nurse anesthetist,
Hmm.
you know what I'm
Got it.
talking about? So um, just to go real practical here, when people think about going under anesthesia,
Mm.
sometimes they do have a lot of fears about that, anxious. So in that practical sense, when you're working with people, what are some of the things you tell them? What are the things that you tell them to help them feel safe so they can heal? Because it's really hard to heal when you're in fear.
Yes. Well, when you're in fear, you're literally lost in an illusion. So fear is false evidence appearing real. I love that. Or if they're not laying in bed, the other one could be forget everything and run. And I don't let them run. Once in a while, people do chicken out from surgery, but it's really true. Fear is an illusion, and it will literally consume you. It's almost like a poison, and it can do tremendous damage over the long term. Science has proven it, that fear is very destructive when it's chronic. And so when patients come to me, it's really interesting. I don't say too much to them, but what I do is I touch them. I will place my hand on their hand, on the top of their hand, and I'll say, "Good morning." And I will look them in the eye, my soul to your soul.
Mhm.
I may touch you on the shoulder, and so I'm choosing places that are safe, one, for a male to touch a female, or maybe a guy that's not, I don't consider myself super masculine. And so, some guys are threatened by guys who aren't super masculine. So, so I'm real careful. I judge quickly, can they tolerate me touching them? Can I touch your shoulder? Can I touch your hand? I'll say good morning, and I look them in the eyes and I just show them a moment of compassion. And I also let them know, I explain, I go into detail. Have you ever had this before? No, just let me explain what I'm going to do to support you in this procedure. I'm here to take care of you. And so I want them to know that. And I'm here to support their needs in the moment. And I also tell them, you're going to be fine because I'm here and I'm going to be here the whole time. And, sometimes I joke. I love to joke. And so I will tease them a little bit because I know where their fear is taking them. Will I wake up? Will I see the light? Will I, all these kinds of things. Will I not wake up?
Mhm.
And so I'll tell them, well, if you see the light, come back this way because that's too much paperwork. I don't have time for that today. You got it?
That's
And usually I will only say crazy things like that to my patients that are already amped up and they're a little corny or they're being silly with me. Okay, I'll be silly with you. Some
Mhm.
people can't, they don't even want to go there.
Mhm.
But I just try to either bring humor in the moment. I let them know I see you and I'm going to take care of you. And I will tell them, even though I may be looking at a monitor where their blood pressure is through the roof and their heart rate is low, I will say, you know what? Everything looks great on the computer. And they don't need to see that it's not,
Mhm.
because I'm not going to imprint them with fear, or I'm not going to imprint them with that negative energy that which really releases us types of hormones, catecholamines and things like that, which will affect the body during surgery. So a lot of times it's so fascinating to me when my patients fall asleep under anesthesia, several times they will wake up in the same state. Isn't that interesting? It's almost like their brain or their spirit has placed them on pause. And so I've even had patients who will fall asleep telling me something. They will stop at a word, and when they wake up and become coherent, the sentence finishes. It's really the most fascinating thing, that the
So
mind can hold that thought and literally pick back up and continue. Doesn't happen often, but it happens once in a while. So science fascinates me. I've always been fascinated by science. which has worked against me as an intuitive and as an empath or someone who works with their spiritual energies, because my gosh, I gave my poor mentors gray hairs. I just couldn't believe it was me being psychic. I couldn't believe that I was really getting something for someone. And I know I gave them gray hairs.
Well, actually, that's what I wanted to talk about next. So you were doing the nursing for years and years,
Yeah.
but then something happened. What is the something that happened that changed
Well,
the way you were going?
so I graduated in December 2026 from Florida International University with my degree in nursing anesthesia and also as a nurse practitioner. So it was a dual degree program, which was a pretty big deal. And I thought, woo, I am golden. I'm set. I'm going to have a great financial future. I can see retirement 30, 40 years in the future. I never have to take another class. I don't ever have to go back to school again. I'm set. Well, isn't that interesting? Because 6 months later, I got slapped in the face by the universe, and I started a whole new chapter in life. And what basically happened was, at this point in my life, this would have been my mid-30s, and I really didn't care for God. I didn't care for religion. I didn't care for churches. I didn't care for any of that. And so I was sitting at home studying, and there was the only thing I could describe at the time, and that your viewers may understand, is there was a presence that came around me that reminded me of stories of the Holy Spirit. This living, feeling energy field that somehow surrounded me, behind me, and it was as though a person walked up behind me. I could feel this person energy, and I couldn't tell what gender it was at the time, but I remember feeling safe, and I thought, okay, I'm not scared. I don't feel like I need to run. I feel safe with this, whatever this is. And I heard, go get in your car, go drive. And I thought, that's crazy. I don't like driving. I'm a man of purpose and science, and I got to have a destination. I don't like just driving randomly. So I remember thinking, this is so weird, but okay, I'm going to trust it because it reminds me of those old Bible scriptures. And I got in my car, and of course, Snarky Kevin came out, and I said, fine, now what? And I swear I heard like a GPS, I heard a woman's voice say, drive south. And I thought, okay, there's nothing south of Fort Lauderdale, but this sleepy little town called Dania Beach. Nobody goes there except for Canadians on holiday. Nobody goes there. It was a sleepy town. And I didn't realize at the time. It took me a couple of years to realize, but there was somehow I knew exactly the road to take, what path to take around the airport to get to this little town. I didn't take the highway systems or all the major roads in Fort Lauderdale. And as I drove into this little town, I thought, Kevin, you are crazy. What are you doing? And just about that time, I saw this sign go by, and it said Metaphysical Chapel. And I remember thinking, whoa, that creeps me out. Whatever that is, I don't like it. And that word metaphysical and that word chapel, that's like angels dating demons. And I don't like it. And I want nothing to do with that. That made no sense. It went against everything I was taught. And I tried to ignore it and drive past it. And the presence came back in my car. And I heard, turn around, you must turn around. And there was an urgency in the voice and a feeling in my spirit that if I don't do it, it would be the end of the world. Like it just felt like there was nothing beyond that urgency. Meaning if I said no and kept going, it'd just be a boring life. That's kind of what it felt like. And so I ended up discovering this little church that was dying, and it was literally weeks away from closing its doors. And it turned out to be the church that changed my life. And their teachings were beautiful, and their teachings were quite old. And they were a spiritualist community. They taught metaphysics, they taught Eastern philosophies. And it was from that experience about 6 months later that I figured out who that person was that had come to visit me. It was Mother Mary. And that was peculiar to me because I knew who she was. I knew the stories. I never prayed to her. And it wasn't someone that I was lost in thought in all the time. But yet this person, Mother Mary, spoke through a medium and told me, and no one knew except for me, she said, we guided you to that church. And I thought, this man doesn't know that I was guided to a church. And she said, we want you to know you have free will, Kevin, and we see great things in you. You have free will. You can leave your church or you can stay. But if you stay, you will change the lives of tens of thousands of people in your life. You don't realize your potential, and we love you. And that was really the core of the message that came. And what no one knew, and what I had decided the night before, was that I was never going back to that church, to the religion, to those people. I wanted nothing to do I was with any of that, because I was trying to protect my soul. I was scared. And I was scared because I just couldn't process my childhood upbringing religion with this new religion. And there was a lot of torment going on. It was all self-induced. And to have that message come from this saintly being that really, in a way, hadn't died. There was a life to the message. And what she didn't say to me was that I was an abomination, that I was evil in the eyes of God, that I was somehow didn't deserve to breathe the oxygen of earth. Right. And so what I realized was she spoke loving words of support, encouragement, and upliftment for me when I had never heard that in a religious setting. It was always being spoken down to, or diminishing, or extinguishing. And that evening changed my life, because I realized there is something beyond this reality. I realized, you know what, that good sense of my soul that I've recognized that was in me the whole time, it is real. And so I saw really for the first time that I held value, I had worthiness, my dreams mattered. And it changed me so much. I didn't fear death after that evening, which was quite interesting. I never felt God hated me. I began to understand what God was. We are an expression of that great force. And I realized that there was no judgment. There could never be any judgment against any of us for what we say, do, or think. And so everything that I'd been taught in childhood was not accurate. And it really released me from a lifetime of pain and suffering, self-induced and also externally induced. And it empowered me to begin changing my life. And I realized, if this can happen for me, how do I make this happen for other people? And that really was like fertilizer to my soul, because it just empowered me to begin creating the space to allow people to transform their lives. And I literally rescued that dying church, taught them how to run a business, grew the business, ended up taking over the church, became the spiritual leader. I was ordained, everything. And I led the church for many years. And so we had that community for a good 15 to 17 years. And then we closed it in the pandemic. But it was truly an amazing part of my life journey, truly amazing.
Wow. So you were nursing then, you were
Mhm.
doing, you were taking care of the
Yeah,
church,
I sure
bringing it
was.
back to life.
Full-time nurse and full-time volunteer, literally, for
Mhm.
the church until I became the leader of the church. So then I had two full-time jobs. And I was pleasing a hell of a lot of people, trying to love myself. Didn't realize what I was doing, burning myself out, hurting my relationships. It took me a while. I'm a little slow, but I got there. I realized the value of beginning to love myself. Like I said, just in the last many years. Yeah.
And then when did you meet your mentors? In your bio, I read about several mentors and coaches.
Well, I'll tell you,
How'd
in
that
the
start?
pandemic, when the pandemic shut us down, we all thought, what the heck do we do now? And people began to discover what they loved. They discovered the love of cooking. They discovered the love of gardening. Discovered family communication. Like, people began to look inside themselves. And so when I closed the doors during the pandemic to the ministry that I had built, I realized, well, what the heck do I do now? I have all these skills and talents and experiences, and what do I do with all this? And I thought, well, at the core of it, it's healing. I'm helping people better their lives. And what do the vast majority of people want? Well, they want to figure out what to do in life, what really matters. How can they use all of that to serve other people? And I thought, well, at the core, that's really finding your life purpose. So I really said, you know what? If I couldn't sustain my business, my church business, then let me go find somebody who can teach me how to run a business right. Because I want to be successful and I want to touch and speak to as many people as possible on as many stages, but I really need to know what the heck I'm doing out there outside of the church walls. So leave it to spirit. Definitely I'm a workaholic. My whole life I have been. One day I was sitting on the couch. And now, mind you, I had been meditating for many years. I'd been speaking to spirit. I could sense spirit around me, things like that. And this one day, watching something on Netflix, I guess, I remember feeling the presence of spirit come close, and I could hear, get up, go to your computer. You must go to your computer now. And I thought, seriously, I'm a workaholic. That's the last place I need to be. And so I thought, okay, it never guides me wrong. Let me trust it. Let me walk my talk. And I sat down at the computer, turned on Facebook, and there was a lady that I had admired having a podcast, a live stream. And I was listening. And of course, I was typing, oh, that's amazing, because Kevin wanted to be on her stage. So I was doing a little brown nosing. And there was this sassy lady that was being interviewed talking about business. And I thought, okay, yeah, okay. She's pretty and she's smart. Clearly, she's very successful. Okay, but I'm not interested in her. I'm interested in the podcast host or the live streamer.
Mhm.
And suddenly I heard it was like it hit me like a ton of bricks. The lady being interviewed, this coach woman, Susie Carder, she began to use words and phrases that I had been using for 2 or 3 weeks in my meditations. She was using literally the same words and phrases that I had been telling Spirit, I need a coach who can help me build my business that is sustainable. Spirit, I need a coach that can help me create systems and create frameworks and create funnels and gets me as a speaker. I don't want just any coach. I want the best coach for my soul. And she needs to be purpose driven, like all this stuff. And here's this woman saying these things. And I realized that's what Spirit wanted. And just as I realized that she was somebody I needed to listen to, then out of her words, out of her mouth came, oh, and by the way, if you know Lisa Nichols, I'm the one who took her from $80,000 to $800,000 in 1 year. I was her business coach. And I thought, oh my gosh, Lisa Nichols is the only coach that I've ever wanted to coach me as a speaking coach. And she was going to be, I already knew it, my next coach after the business school. And it just was perfect. And so out of all that came, next, Susie's like, well, Kevin, if you're going to be on stage, you got to have a book. And I said, I know, but it's a lot of work and I don't have time. And she's like, you got to do it. So she said, go talk to this lady. I go talk to the lady. Turns out her daughter had married the son of Lisa Nichols, and the lady had been studying Lisa Nichols. So like they were all related. It was not planned. It was so perfectly synchronistic and magical. And it's been the best thing. Every single one has helped me along the way to make me who I am, to teach me how to be strategic and how to be efficient. And actually, oddly enough, I learned to love myself in the business school. She taught us how to love ourselves and change our mindset. And that's probably the best thing she ever did for me, more than even teaching me how to run the business. And so I'm so grateful. It makes me emotional. I'm so grateful because I learned to really love myself in that program, value my time, value the services I bring, value the free time that I seek, and the freedom to do what I want to do, how I want to do it. And it was priceless.
Yeah. Well, Susie Carder is lovely and
Yeah.
she really knows her stuff. And I actually interviewed her. So if listeners
Oh,
want to
love
hear more
her.
about Susie
See?
Carder,
Another synchronicity.
just look on the podcast. I don't remember which episode it is. I've done over 400 at this point, but
Yeah, you've done 415 as far as I can tell. I've done my
yeah,
research.
I have about 30 already in the
Proud of you.
pre-recorded just
Oh,
not put out yet.
that's amazing. But see, it just doesn't, that does not surprise me. I'm excited, but here we go, spirit again.
Mhm.
And that just means, like you said in the beginning, we're so aligned with our message and the work we do. And I find that so often, even in my clients are so incredibly aligned with the way I feel, the way I think, the things I'm going through, the challenges I'm facing. Turns out my brand new clients almost always they're going through the same problems I'm going through. So I get to work through my problems with my clients. It's really uncanny.
Mhm. Yeah, and actually that was my next question.
Mhm.
At this point, what services do you have? What are you offering people? How do people connect with you?
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, this fall, I'm very excited. I've been asked to come back and speak on a cruise. And so in 2024, December 8th through the 15th, I'm going to be on a spiritual cruise. I think we need more of them in the world. I might see what I can do to create my own at some point soon. But I love the concept of going on a vacation. I love the Caribbean, love the ocean, but actually going to these magical sites where they go back thousands of years, where you get to touch into other cultures and belief systems, and how did they connect with the source called God? How did they view that divine source, or the potentials inside them? So I love all of that. So there's going to be a lot of spiritual speakers on the cruise. So this is a Spirit Heart cruise, December 8th through the 15th. And we'll make sure that we drop a link in the description if people would like to check it out and come join us. But I'll be teaching, interestingly enough, one of the more basic principles of how to bring forward your intuition using oracle cards. It's the first thing that I was ever trained to do. It gave me wings. And I love teaching students because it gives them something physical to hold on to
Mhm.
and to not second guess their intuitive nature. It's so innate, it's already inside you. We just need to get you to verbalize it, let it out. And the cards are a great key to do that. I just love oracle cards of all types.
Wow, just for people who don't know what those are or how
Sure.
they work, can you give a little explanation?
Absolutely. So oracle cards, is for thousands of years, cultures have used tools and items. Think of like rocks or crystals or bones or seeds or all kinds of feathers, all kinds of unusual things. So those have evolved over the years to now to include uh, um, like almost like little cards. And these are divinatory tools, and these tools are used to hold information on them. In other words, it could be a card with a picture of a bird with three grapes in its mouth, or a what I can't think of the name of the beautiful leaf, but it's a leaf of peace that a dove would hold. So if I see a dove, I will know, oh, someone has recently just crossed into spirit. And so you can use the symbology, the colors, the different numbers of items on a card to really inspire you to bring forward a message, because we have numerology and Kabbalism use a lot of symbology and numbers to mean different things. When it was written that Noah went out onto the waters for 40 days and 40 nights in his ark, it doesn't mean 40 days literally, 40 nights literally. It means an unspecified long period of time. That's why that number 40 keeps repeating in the Old Testament and the New Testament. Why did Jesus go into the Garden of Gethsemane for 7 days? Because it's a state of completion. He completes his thought or his spiritual connection on the seventh day and returns back to the people. So there's a reason why numbers are so important, and people see this divine influence in symbols of nature, or the numerology that as things present. And so I love that, because cards can hold, these divinatory cards can hold numbers and symbols and colors and patterns, and literally spirit uses that to inspire you to say things. And it's just so natural, so easy. That's why I love them.
Okay, well, that's helpful. Thank you. So now I have a personal question for you. What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
Oh, I love that. I would say I would say the moment I realize someone is new to my world, meaning the things that I'm teaching, they've never met me before, but yet something about how I presented something has literally awakened their mind to new perspectives, or has suddenly pushed back any of the dark thoughts or darkness that they've self-induced on them. There's this moment, it's a peculiar energy. It must be me sensing the light of their soul expanding, because I can feel a shift in the person, and then they're not the same person that showed up an hour ago, 30 minutes ago. There's something different about them, and they seem brighter. And those, I live for those moments. I don't get them that often, but meaning I don't sense it that often, uh, because people, I think, are already on the journey. They've already begun the shift. But once in a while, I get to be there when there's a birth of a new perspective. And that's like magic to me. I love those moments. So I'm always, it's like an Easter egg. I'm always hunting to find that Easter egg. There's a sense of joy. What am I going to get on the inside? And just to be in that moment of a rebirth in their spirit. I love that moment.
That is beautiful. And I'm just curious, when you're in front of a group of people speaking, have you ever had that experience where you feel the room shift?
Oh, yes, definitely. Because in ministry, in seminary, actually, they taught us how to work with our energy, to cast our energy out into the room. So if you see me on stage and my hands are doing this and I'm speaking to a room, it's because I'm literally casting my energy over the room to connect with the audience. So I'm building a field of energy that's a healing field that links them to me so that we're in alignment. And so it's an energetic technique. I don't think a lot of speakers realize they're doing it, interestingly enough. But I definitely am connected to a room, and I can tell when I'm not, because it's like my thoughts distract me and my speech becomes disjointed, and there's way too many ums and way too many pauses, and that tells me you're not in your heart, you're in your head. You're trying to prove something to them. Get out of your head, get back in your heart, and just love on the audience, and they'll love you. And so that's just a perspective that I've discovered over the years. That my work tends to be healing because of that joining of my spirit with the audience's spirit.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast
Thank
today,
you, thank
for
you.
all your wisdom and sharing your very vulnerable story.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So, yeah, so I have one last question before we
Mhm.
finish. What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
Mm. You know what? It would be to slow down, to step out into nature, love nature. And nature is a great reset, and to really be willing to be vulnerable and to stop and look and to go inside and to feel, how do I feel in this moment? That's really the first step. How do I feel just sitting with myself? And if you can get to a place where you enjoy sitting with yourself, looking inside, you can begin to notice, what do I really love? And that's a brave question. What am Some people don't believe that they are allowed to love. And so you have to really just get to a place where you find peace with saying, well, what do I love in life? And what can I do with that love? How can I bless myself while blessing the planet? And really I would say, that's really the crux of it, is just being willing to go inside, find your purpose from your passions. And it's really, what do you love? And just begin to soar with that. That's really the key to it all.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kevin.
Oh, I appreciate it. This has been amazing, that just the opportunity to share with your community. I love to see just people in the world focused on purpose. I love passion, obviously, but I can see it in your community. I actually do research. I love to watch. I've watched your videos, and I could see you holding space for your people like me, your guests that would come on the show. And
Mhm.
I love that, just the variety, the fragrance that you bring into this garden of life is beautiful. And I thank you for allowing that to exist in the world. You created a space that is allowing people to transform their lives in a very great way. And I appreciate that as well. And I'm sure your audience does. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Many blessings.